Ruth, and she's a member of Bloom in the Desert Ministries. And Ruth was telling us about how she became a widow in World War II and actually met her next husband. Yeah?
Both of them.
So your first husband died as a casualty of war.
Yes.
But Stu was in the war as well, wasn't he?
Yes. He lost a leg.
Now, but there was no connection between your first husband and Stu? They weren't friends or anything like that? Or?
Yes, they were.
Oh, they were friends. So tell us about that.
Well, the two families, Proctor family and Durant family, were members of the same congregational church. They lived back, the back of their houses on an alley in Chicago were practically side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart went from kindergarten through high school in the same class as my first husband's sister.
Wow.
So when it was announced that, well, first of all, Paula wanted to know where her daddy was. He never had the privilege of holding his child.
Wow.
And thanks to Don Bond, our present minister, he did take beautiful pictures of the baby and sent them to the service people. He did them for anyone that had someone.
Nice.
And that was he said that was the only thing he could think of that he could make a difference in their life. So he did that, and so my husband did see pictures, and my dad wrote long letters telling him about the success of the baby's growth and whatnot.
Yes.
But when Paula was 10 months old, we got the message, and I was at work, my father was at work. My mother opened it, and some of these dramatic things on TV and whatnot, the movies, show the considerate way of letting the widow know. But the telegram came, the fellow handed it to my mother and ran off.
Wow. Wow.
He didn't want to face it. So anyway, I was at work and I was informed, and we all came home in the cab, and my mother notified my sister, who worked in the same building in the Loop, that my sister and my husband's sister worked in the same building, and they passed the word on. So we found his mother at work, and we just all got in the car, and his aunt, and we all got in the cab and went home to our respective houses. And it was a very shocking day for all of us.
I can imagine.
But later, when it was announced, the boys were coming home. Paula was only about 2 at the time, and her favorite question was, "Where's my daddy?" We had a picture of him hanging in the house, but she didn't consider that enough. But all the women with husbands overseas would get together, and we had young children. And after the war, Paula saw her friends having daddies come home. She asked, "Where's my daddy?" And I explained it as best I could.
That's got to be heartbreaking.
It was. And then with the news that Stu and I were going together and we're probably going to be married, I said, well, someday Stu will be your daddy. And she said, "You mean we're going to have a husband?" And then she went, when I actually told her that, well, Grandma Durant doesn't think you should call him by his first name. He's going to be your daddy and you should call him Daddy. And she said, "Not until we're married."
How cute. Now, how did you meet Stu? How did you meet Stu? Had you met him through school and all of that, and you knew him, and how did you reconnect with him?
Well, we were friends
Mm-hmm.
in the same discussion group. He moved to Baltimore after the war. He worked in aircraft engineer, and he went back to Baltimore but didn't stay there. That was to the Martin aircraft, I think. And then he came back to Chicago, and we were at a farewell party to a member of the church who was leaving to where his children were. And at that meeting, I had just purchased a camera, 8mm Bell and Howell camera, that morning, and Stuart overheard me talking to some of my friends about having bought a camera. Stu was the camera bug, I guess you would say. And so when he heard the word, he came right over. What did you buy? What kind of camera did you buy? And I told him, oh. And then about the next thing was, what are you doing Saturday night? And so that started our dating.
Nice.
And then after the war and after things were getting back to normal in this country, I don't know exactly where to begin or start, but Stu and I married. We had a wonderful life, 69 and a half years together before he passed away. And then but at the time, after the war, I was still working and doing things. But when my kids, after marrying Stu, we had a boy together, and after Paula and Marty have managed to grow up and move away, I had to say, what am I supposed to be doing now? The bridge clubs and the bike riding and all these crazy things that the Del Webb stuff offered, several from the church, and my sister and brother-in-law all moved there. I thought I would join them, but I didn't, because that was not the life I wanted.
Yeah.
And the more and more I saw the war, the ravages of war, I decided I've got to do something worthwhile. And so I was going to name the story of my interest, the finding love in a hostile environment, because in St. Louis, where I was living at the time after Stu married me, we ended up in St. Louis at what is now Boeing, but then was the Douglas aircraft. So we lived in St. Louis, and our kids were out of the nest, and so I had done a lot of volunteering in different phases while the kids were growing up. And I called, mostly in Christian ed and the development of the United Church curriculum, which would include Congregational Christian and Evangelical and Reform. And so for a while I was a member of Church of the Master in Florissant, Missouri. And I did a lot of volunteer work, and then they had hired me as Christian Ed associate.